Guyana, this is The Public Interest. I'm Malika Ramsey. Thank you very much for joining us again this week. This week's program is designed to focus on Guyana's economy, growth potential, and diversification. Of course, on the panel, as usual, is the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, His Excellency Brigadier David Granger. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Malika.
And this week we're joined by two young ladies, of course, beginning with Miss Svetlana Marshall from the Guyana Chronicle. Welcome, Svetlana.
Thank you so much.
And Miss Wharton from Capital News. Welcome, Iva. First off, Mr. President, today's first question is designed to take you back a bit. Of course, unfortunately, Guyana is indeed said to be one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere. However, the late President Hoyt's economic recovery program in 1989 came in for high praise, and it was even said that Guyana's GDP increased by 6%. That would have been in 1991. Can, at this time, or will your government use any aspects of that economic recovery program to, in a sense, put Guyana in a better position regarding economic growth?
Well, that's an important question with strategic consequences. To start with, the economic recovery program, I would feel dealt with short and middle term measures which were needed to correct some of the faults that emerged during the 1980s when a large part of the economy was state-owned. There are many state corporations. So the economic recovery program was a program designed to rebalance the economy by giving greater emphasis or more important role to the private sector and reducing the role of the state in the economy. For example, several banks were state-controlled, trade was state-controlled, corporations, sugar corporations, all were state-controlled. Now, these changes under the Hoyt Recovery Program, while they were necessary, they were not sufficient for restructuring the economy. Mm-hmm. That is to say, the economy was still based on what I call the Six Sisters, sugar, rice, bauxite, gold, diamonds, timber. Essentially, Guyana's economy is still based on agriculture, mining, and forestry. And this limits our ability to grow. And we need to diversify very widely if we are to move forward. So I would say that it's no point going back to the Hoyt reforms. Those have been introduced. We have to look forward to restructuring the economy in a fundamental way, in a strategic way, if we are to see real transformation, if Guyana is to generate real wealth.
But can anything at all from it be applied to today's economy?
Oh yes, the principles which were enshrined in the Economic Recovery Program, ERP, are still valid. We've liberalized the economy and we're not going to move backwards. We're not going to start re-establishing state corporations. We would like to see a greater role for the private sector, but at the same time, the state has a responsibility to provide the infrastructure which the private sector will not provide, in order to allow some of those industries to function. Similarly, the state has to lead the way away from purely extractive industries towards service industries. So what I'm trying to say is that for timber to thrive, for gold to thrive, the state has to assist by building highways to the sources of timber and gold and other enterprises. Private enterprise wouldn't do that on its own. So we have a role there. And that is what we want to see, a mixed economy, but the state has a role to play in providing the conditions, and the private sector can play a lead role in actually doing business, in actually exploiting, in actually investing, producing, manufacturing, and exporting. I don't think it's the state's duty at this point in time to get involved with manufacturing and processing and exporting.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. Ms. Marshall, I'd like to give you an opportunity to, of course, as we stay on the set topic.
Okay, Mr. President, if we could turn our attention to today's economy, Ghana would have recorded a 2.5% decrease in its output. However, with the installation of government and the passage of the budget, it is expected to reach 3.4 based on the information you're receiving from the Finance Ministry. Is it likely that we're going to reach this projection?
Yes, I'm confident we could reach the projection, in part that projection is based on a recovery of some of the prices for basic commodities, namely rice, sugar, bauxite, and gold. Those are very important. But at the same time, we need to look at other measures in the government, for example, fiscal measures. That is, we must improve the efficiency for the collection of taxes. We must reduce tax evasion, smuggling, other forms of contraband, and improve collection. We must ensure that the revenues collected are actually paid into the Treasury. In the past, some of the revenues were diverted into other agencies like NISA, which went about the business of building a hotel and other projects. So we need to work on two legs. One, put in place the fiscal measures to make sure that the state gets what it's entitled to get. And second, we need to ensure that the transformation of infrastructure also takes place within the economy and led by the state. And at the same time, we can expect that if there is an improvement in the price of gold, for example, that will help to refloat the economy. So I would say we are quite confident that applying those measures, we could achieve the 3.5% growth or even higher. But some of the world prices are not subject to Guyana government control. So I think we can do better this year. And once our infrastructure program gets going, in future years we can aim at 5 or 7%, but that's not going to happen in 2016.
But while the government is confident, you're confident that the economy will grow, the leader of the opposition, Mr. Barjavio, he's of the opinion that Guyana may have several financial crises long before it experiences an economic crisis. Would you dismiss this given your consideration?
Well, to the extent that he may have a role to play, we've already experienced that earlier this week when there was a completely unnecessary strike in the sugar industry, which is being political. So we hope that the leader of the opposition could use his influence over unions which are known to be affiliated with his party to make sure there is greater stability, industrial stability, and to encourage Guyanese to contribute towards improving the economy. I do not believe that there are grounds for instability. He came into the presidency having been Minister of Finance, so he's quite aware of the problems the fiscal problems that face us. For example, I have a clear recollection that during the 2000s he said that we were losing, when he was president, we were losing about $7 billion a year from evasion of taxes on fuel alone. So he knows a lot of things, and we would certainly like him to use that knowledge in convincing and persuading his supporters to support a lawful economy, which is going to be the basis for the transformation of Guyana. We can't have Guyana going forward with backtracking and a lawless economy, contraband smuggling. These are things which are hemorrhaging resources from the government, and he's quite aware of that.
Mr. President, as you mentioned the strike in the sugar industry, what assurances can you give sugar workers should you go ahead with the privatization of that industry as recommended by the just concluded CEO?
The cabinet, in particular the government itself, has not taken any position as yet. We are still to examine the reports. I think there might be an interim report. There's no final report. All we can say at this stage, that is a recommendation of the Commission of Inquiry. It certainly is not the policy of the government at this point in time. There has been no further discussion, there's been no consultation. But the sugar industry has been ailing for some time, and we are concerned that it is a large employer of labor, and we certainly would not take any hasty measures without consultation with the representative of the working people. We would certainly like the industry to survive. It is not a standalone industry. It produces molasses. The rum industry is dependent on it, and there might be some parts of the industry which could be rehabilitated more quickly than other parts. So it is not dead in the water, and there is a lot of life left in the sugar industry. And as far as possible, we need to reduce inefficiencies, reduce costs, and try to, once we lower the cost of production, we could aim at markets and also support the ancillary industries which depend on sugar. So it's not over. It's not over, and I think any talk about the death of the sugar industry is premature.
Ladies, we just have time for one final question on the economy.
Thank you. This is moving to oil. ExxonMobil is expected to begin extracting oil soon. Where exactly, in terms of educating Guyana for jobs in this extractive industry, are we?
Well, as you can see, we are putting a lot of emphasis on education, and particularly science, physics and chemistry, and also engineering, mathematics. We have also been in discussion with our sister CARICOM state, Trinidad and Tobago, which has a well-established petroleum industry. And we expect that the investors, not only ExxonMobil, but there are other investors who will bring their own teams of international technical experts in the industry. So there's no danger. I mean, petroleum is produced in many countries of the world, so there's no danger there'll be a shortage of labor. But Guyanese are unfamiliar with that branch of engineering, and I hope that the efforts that we've been making, the messages we've been sending to the education sector to put more emphasis on science and technology and engineering will bear fruit, and that will take years to come, maybe 5 or 7 years. But petroleum is not going to be produced next week. That itself will take another 5 or 7 years. So we're walking side by side with the industry, and we expect that by the time that the oil and the gas start to flow, we will have Guyanese who can take up important positions in the industry.
Svetlana, I can allow a follow-up from you if you wish.
Yes. Taking a look at the creation of jobs, since your government entered office, what has been done to create jobs? And if we could turn our attention to the mining town of Linden, we see there that for example, Bullseye would have terminated the services of several workers, and Toucan Connections, they were forced to close their doors. What are some of the plans you have to transform the economic landscape of that particular region, and by extension the rest of Guyana, with respect to creation of jobs?
Well, our main plank has always been to encourage young people to go into agriculture, particularly agro-processing. There are no jobs, there are no state jobs, in the police force or the army. The service sector, the manufacturing sector is not fully developed in Guyana. So when people are removed from one sector, it is difficult. There is very little flexibility. In the mining industry particularly, there are better prospects because there was a tradition in which person coming out of the bauxite mining industry would continue to go into the hinterland and work in gold mining industry. Unfortunately, at the present time, gold is suffering a reduction in the price, and many people have been leaving the gold industry. But that is cyclical; it's temporary, and we expect in 2016, when gold prices recover, there will be an easier flow of persons from the mining industry. Related skills, the skills are related. And I was very pleasantly surprised some years ago to see a lot of Lindeners working in what was then OMI and other gold mining industries. So I know some of them have gone into work in the mining industry in Suriname. But then again, gold prices are low all over, and many of them are out of jobs. So I expect that at a place like Linden, which you mentioned specifically, there will be jobs in the mining industry, but in the middle and long term, we need to get young people into agriculture, agro-processing, and get them not to rely so much on waged labor. We want to see more independent farmers, more independent processors, more independent manufacturers, more independent exporters, and trying to get a sort of 9-to-5 job or working 5 days a week with an enterprise is no longer the way to go. Education has to go towards science, it has to go towards agriculture, it has to go towards entrepreneurship. Private entrepreneurs are going to build this economy, not wage laborers.
All
That's
right.
my view.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies, you're now free to move on to the other segment where you can pose other questions of your choice.
Mr. Granger, Mr. President, sorry, housing. During your campaign for the presidency, you promised to make housing more affordable and reduce cost of living. What would you say to citizens are your immediate plans to address housing, especially for the small man?
Well, for the small man, I think we need to get off of the present purely corporate turnkey structure. We need to reintroduce the idea of aided self-help. When you consider the cost of land, the cost of materials, and the time that some of the prospective homeowners have to devote to these new houses, we see that there is a great deal of frustration resulting. What we need to do is have an aided self-help program so that poor people, poor working people with families will get some assistance in terms of having access to cheaper land, but at the same time, through cooperatives, through their own efforts, build their homes by themselves, rather than depending on a corporation, because many people are being dissatisfied with the workmanship that is being done in some of these houses. So that is one of the reasons why, instead of having a Ministry of Local Government, we created something called a Ministry of Communities, so that instead of relying purely on a corporate transaction between a buyer and a seller, we can look at building communities and getting working people involved in aided self-help schemes rather than buy and sell.
If I can ask a follow-up, how far are you from implementing this program? We already have persons who are still frustrated that they're still paying $500,000 or $1.2 million for a house lot. They don't know exactly when the price will be reduced.
It will be possible this year. It is something that's being planned for financial year 2016. There is no plan on the table now for those self-help schemes. It is something for 2016. So that should be included in the budget for next year. So we're not far along. We're not along the way at all.
Okay, talking about 2016, in light of the hefty increases given to the increases of salaries for ministers, would government be moving to handsomely compensate public servants, taking into consideration the promise that was made in the 2015 manifesto by the Partnership for National Unity and the Alliance for Change Coalition?
Yeah, but one of the first things we did after entering office was to establish something called the Salaries and Conditions of Services Commission, that is SACOS, under Professor Harry Lutchman and his team. And the whole purpose was to examine salaries and conditions of service for the public servants, and we're waiting on that report. So we expect that once we get word from Professor Lutchman, hopefully by the end of this year, we would be able to incorporate those changes in financial year 2016. So it is coming.
Mr. President, if we can deal with crime, you had said who better to solve crime and security than David Granger. What is happening? Are you satisfied with the solutions? Right.
I am satisfied that progress has been made. There are structural issues which have to be dealt with. One, of course, is the actual state of the Guyana Police Force. I have set up something called the National Security Committee, and I meet every week with the Prime Minister, Minister of Public Security, Chief of Staff, Commissioner of Police, and other persons to deal with mainly with the crime problem. We are strengthening the CID, so although crimes are being committed, there is better response, there is better investigation, and there will be more prosecution. We need to look at some of the social factors. We need to look at not only at crime, but at the causes of crime. And it took a long time to get where we are now, and we're not going to change crime or change the face of crime overnight. For example, domestic violence is calls for a lot of education. Some of the problems we have in the hinterland, banditry, piracy, even though we can take short-term measures, it will take a bit of time before those measures actually reverse crime. There's something like domestic violence. People beat their wives or kill their husbands, because things might have happened to them, in the household, which the state doesn't have control over. It will take a bit of time to deal with those types of issues. So there have been rapes, there have been murders. These are not crimes which are preventable by the state. We can investigate and we can prosecute, but we need to bring about certain changes in society. Last week I was at Blackbush Boulder, Nibikori, which is a center of suicides. But we need to find out why. It's not a depressed area, it's not a ghetto. It is a reasonably prosperous farming area. So we need to look at causation. Why are these people committing suicide? So it is a crime. So I cannot say that we will solve crime, because you know what happened in the first decade of this millennium, between 2000 and 2010 or thereabouts, fine man, drug trafficking and so on. There was a theory that some of that violence, the criminal violence, was a result of the drug trade. In fact, Dr. Luncheon himself, the former head of the presidential secretariat, attributed the crime wave, as it was called then, to drug gang warfare. But now the so-called ringleaders have gone. We still have a high level of crime. And part of the reason is that we have not been able to eradicate the narcotics trade and the gun running and the associated ills. One thing we're going to hear about in the next fortnight is this administration's adoption of the National Drug Strategy Master Plan, which has not been implemented by the previous administration, which we will implement, even though it's flawed. We are going to create a new agency called the National Anti-Narcotics Agency, NANA, and we are going to deal with this scourge of narco-trafficking, which we believe has a knock-on effect on other crimes. Sometimes you hear about an execution, and you don't know the reason. We are assuming that some of the transnational crimes that we faced, narco-trafficking, contraband, smuggling, people smuggling, gun running, the transnational crimes will expectedly be brought under control. So there's not just one type of crime, domestic crime. There are crimes which have been caused by Guyana's location on this continent and because of the vulnerability of our borders. So we're looking at all those things. Every week I deal with this issue with the commissioner and the chief of staff and the vice president. And it will take a bit of time to control our borders, to reduce transnational crimes, to rebuild our police force. I will admit to you that I did have a meeting with Prime Minister David Cameron, then at the United Nations in September, and I did make a formal request for the reintroduction of the Security Sector Reform Action Plan, which was offered to the previous administration but was rejected. So there are many initiatives in the pipeline, but I do believe that they will take a bit of time to have an impact on what I call everyday crime.
Have you been given a commitment by Prime Minister Cameron on this program?
No, I didn't get a commitment. I made a request, and I am convinced that that request has been considered. I have been in touch with the High Commissioner for the United Kingdom in Georgetown, and he's aware of that request.
And if I can give one last follow-up on this program, on this question, the Drug Strategy Master Plan. Since your government took office, were there any attempts to do any modifications to that plan, or will you be doing modifications as you go along after implementation?
We have accepted, or we have examined the existing National Drug Strategy Master Plan, and it is a work in progress. We haven't thrown it out of the window. We will see what is workable, and implement those parts that are workable. As I said, the main initiative will be the establishment of the NANA, and whatever changes need to be made will be done as we go along. We are not going to wait until we have a perfect plan. We're going to use what we inherited. I have noticed myself some changes from the plans which previously existed. I was a member of something called the National Drug Law Enforcement Commission since 1990, and the President himself chaired that commission. But I noticed that over the years there have been changes in the architecture. But the intention now is to have a plan that works so that we can deal with these transnational crimes rather than wait, until the best comes along. We have to make do with what we have now, and that is what is going to be happening from November.
I believe my last question. When exactly would you be appointing ambassadors and finalizing the board appointments?
I have already had a meeting with Vice President Cardenas, Minister for Foreign Affairs, and we are examining some of the nominations. And as far as the boards are concerned, we are also examining nominations. We have to consult with the opposition because we would like the opposition to take up their seats on the agencies, boards, and commission. So this too is a work in progress.
Svetlana, no, I can't. Svetlana, the last two questions go to you.
If I could take you back to the issue of security, but with respect to the border dispute with Venezuela, would the government be moving soon to establish the border committee? Mr. Jagdeo would have expressed some concerns, saying that he needed clarification on whether or not choosing the judicial route can jeopardize the UN's involvement in the process.
No, I think Mr. Jagdeo might not be fully informed about the matter. To start with, I was the one in opposition who wrote to him calling for the setting up of a National Borders Commission. Wrote to, not to him, to his successor, Mr. Ramatar. Secondly, the judicial route is part of the process which is available to the Secretary General of the United Nations. The Secretary General of the United Nations is responsible for choosing a peaceful process, and going to court is part of the peaceful process. So it is quite within the powers, the authority of the Secretary General of the United Nations to choose such a course. So I'm not sure what Mr. Jagdeo might have meant. But as long as the process is peaceful, there is a menu of measures which the Secretary General could choose under the Charter of the United Nations, and that is one of them. So it is up to him. I met Mr. Ban Ki-moon face-to-face on 2 occasions. He sent 2 teams here to Georgetown to deal with this matter. We are awaiting the report from the Secretary General, and he is bent on consensus. He's not going to take any unilateral action. The United Nations is not a Supreme Court. It will call its sides together and attempt to arrive at an outcome, a solution, which is acceptable to both sides. It doesn't make sense if one side does not accept. So he wants a consensual outcome, and we want a successful outcome. Okay. And we are confident that by going to court, we will resolve this matter. We do not want the next generation of Guyanese to have to go through what we've gone through for the last 50 years.
Final question, Svetlana.
Okay. Inclusionary democracy, unity talks. We haven't heard much on that recently. Could you give us an update?
Well, we had one meeting with Mr. Jagdeo. I couldn't have a meeting with him until he was actually elected leader of the opposition. As you know, the PPP doesn't have any leader. It has a general secretary. And now that Mr. Jagdeo, once Mr. Jagdeo had been appointed, had been elected, we invited him to a meeting. And right now, we are more or less marching to his drum, or the process of inclusionary democracy is marching to his drum. I think he wants to take his time. He has to consult people within his party. And whenever he's ready to meet me, I will meet with him. There are other things to be done, the appointments to agencies, boards and commissions. There are ongoing issues such as the territorial controversy. We don't have a dispute, we know what the facts are. There's a controversy. But whatever he wants to discuss that is in the national interest, we're prepared to meet him anytime, any place.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, His Excellency Brigadier David Granger. Unfortunately, this is all the time we have with you today on The Public Interest. Thank you to the two journalists, Ivor Wharton and Svetlana Marshall. I'm Malika Ramsey. Join us again next time.